we go. I'm going to assist them. Don't worry. I do this for a living. You notice I'm not touching their feet, right? So this guy, that's gratitude. This is a little girl, a little female. This is the last one. So my name is George Morse. I'm from Butterflies of Cape Cod. So we are located over off of Herring Pond Road in Borndale. My wife and I have been there 17 years. So we basically raise native butterflies and we present them in a exhibit that's in back of our building. So, and we like to think of us as a learning facility. We like to teach people about butterflies, and that's kind of what we do. And we do have a cool gift shop. So anyway, what we're going to talk about today is the monarch butterfly migration. So every year, as we know, the monarch butterflies leave this area and they go down just to Mexico and they overwinter. So the reason is why? Well, they leave it in this area because we get a cold winter. Maybe not so much now with climate change. So the migration itself, or a migratory creature, is different creatures all over the world basically leave one area and go to another for some purpose. A lot of times it is for cold conditions that they don't want to tolerate. You know, in Africa they leave different parts of the savanna and they travel to find food, like gazelles and those type of things. So our monarch butterfly, for probably thousands of years, has basically left the upper area of our country and has gone down to Mexico. So basically the idea behind it is for preservation. Now, if you look at my map here, this line right here across the top in Canada, that's about the height of the milkweed line. So milkweed itself grows throughout the United States and it ends about in this portion of Canada. So that's about how high our monarch butterflies, you know, are in the country. So at this point in time, this is the milkweed line. So milkweed dies down and each year and then it regrows as a perennial. So the butterflies themselves basically will leave this area and they'll head south. Now the whole lines, can everybody see this? Yeah, okay. So the red lines basically depict the migration itself. So it takes the butterflies approximately 2 months to fly to the overwintering grounds in Mexico. So the overwintering grounds down here outside of Jalisco, Mexico, in the Michoacán Valley in Oyamel is basically their target. That's where they go. And the Oyamel fir forests, which are a mountainous region of Mexico, have large fir trees, and the butterflies themselves go down and they land in the fir trees and they basically will stay there for the winter. So when the butterflies come up from that Mexican area, all right, then of course they go through a couple generations, and the ones that we normally see up here in New England are like the second generation. So the butterfly itself, during its normal cycles up here in the United States, they live about 30 days on average. That's about a monarch's lifespan. But when the butterfly gets ready for migration, there's some physical changes inside of it. One of it is that its hormones are in suppression. So what that means is the butterfly is not going to mate. So when the monarchs at third and fourth generation, when we get to about September, and they start to, you know, emerge from their chrysalis, now they are heading for Mexico. And during that time, the monarchs themselves are not mating. So it takes them a couple months to get down here into Mexico, and at that point in time, they hang in huge clusters in the fir forests, and they basically just go into a dormancy. And they can do that for about 7 to 9 months. So the 30-day cycle, when they're active and they're mating, but when they're in their migratory cycle, they are basically long-lived, okay? So now in the spring, or prior to spring, about February into March, then the change happens in the monarchs and they start to mate. The hormones now, come up and they go into mating mode. And so they start to mate down in Mexico, and then the butterflies will start to head north. At that point in time, they'll start to lay eggs. The females will lay eggs in Mexico and up into the southern part of the United States. And then at that point, they die off. So when their hormones go forward into a mating mode, you can almost say now they have about another 30 days to live, okay? All right. So at that point in time, then, of course, they're laying eggs, the females lay eggs, now the eggs go through the cycle, and then they move further up into North America. And at this point in time, we're in August. We're in probably 3rd generation right now of monarch butterflies, and we're getting close. By the time we get into September, then the cycle changes and it all goes back to the migration again. Okay? All right. So that's kind of, when you think about how that works, it cycles every year like that. Now, there are monarchs in other parts of the world, but as far as the scientists know, they didn't arrive there without our help. So back hundreds of years ago, especially missionaries, they used to basically take the milkweed with them, and they went to different parts of the world in pursuit of, religious pursuits, and they would bring the milkweed there, and that's pretty much how they figured the monarch got to other areas of the world. So you will find monarchs in Hawaii, you'll find them in Australia, New Guinea, Indonesia, Azores, but none of them really are migratory, except for the ones that are in Australia. They do have a small migration path, but nothing like the ones in North America do, okay? Now, there are butterflies in North America that don't migrate, mainly in Florida. And the reason for that is, we believe, is because of the introduction of tropical milkweed.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So tropical milkweed is not native to the United States. It's native to Mexico on down through Central America. The problem with tropical milkweed is that it doesn't really die down. I mean, where it comes from is warm all year long, so it doesn't have a cold period like our milkweed. So in the United States itself, we have 110 varieties of milkweed.
Wow.
And believe me, the monarchs will use them all if they can find them, okay? I mean, around here, we're most familiar with our common. That Syriaca is our common milkweed. That's what we're familiar with. But there's many different types and variations of milkweed. So, But anyway, so again, we're talking about the fact is that some monarchs will stay in Florida and they don't have the, the instinct for migration. Just because the milkweed doesn't die down, I think that's like a key factor to monarchs. They realize when milkweed starts to die down, I think that kicks in their migration. Okay, does that make sense? I guess. Sure. So anyway, okay, so let's talk about guidance. Okay, we got a little butterfly. Comes from up here. How's it get down there? And it's never been there before. So again, scientists don't really know 100%. They know it's instinctive in the butterfly genetically. They believe that it uses the position of the sun and the magnetics of the earth is one of the two major factors that they use for guidance. Butterflies themselves can fly, monarchs at least, can fly 11 to 12,000 feet above the earth. So when you think about a little butterfly having to make a 3,000-mile journey, flapping all the way would be a little rough, right? So what they do is they basically will fly up into the upper air currents, and they basically will use glidance to get to where they need to go. But of course, along the way, they need to stop because they need food.
Yeah.
They need to nectar. They need to eat. And that's one of the biggest problems with our corn belt area is the fact is that we basically have eradicated all of the plants that would be there for the monarch butterfly because they're, they compete with our corn and our beets and all the stuff that we...
Milkweed within the corn.
They don't want milkweed in the corn. So our glyphosate, aka Roundup, right? Yay.
Yeah.
Kill everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
So that's one of the reasons why I think that the monarch butterfly, one of the reasons is in decline, is that so we have major roots along, you can see these major roots. So we have a coastal root, we have a mountain root, and we have three major roots that go down through the center of the heartland. Well, the center of the heartland is not very friendly to our poor monarch butterflies. And we feel that a lot of them basically perish on their journey. Depends, but. So a funny thing, in the Missouri area, back, I think it was like 2008, 2009, the Doppler radar picked up an anomaly, weather anomaly, over Missouri, over the main area, and they thought it was a weather event. So of course the meteorologists were in contact with the area around the city, and they said, what's going on? You got lightning, you got hail, and they said, no, there's nothing. Well, they were like puzzled. What the heck is this? What's the radar picking up? Radar was picking up monarch butterflies. Thousands of them that were up at the higher levels, but the weather radar was picking them up. And they basically were fooled to thinking it was a major weather event. It was actually all of the butterflies that were heading south. Pretty neat, right? So a couple scientists one time said, well, how does the monarch find, the Mexico wintering grounds? So they said, what if we took some monarchs late in the season and we moved them a couple 100 miles east? So when they emerged in this part of the country, they took them for a ride.
Yeah.
They brought them and they tagged them.
Yeah.
Well, funny thing happened. When they released the monarchs 200 miles away, they flew back to their origin, and then they went south. Kind of like, okay, right?
Yeah.
So their gyros weren't gonna fly from there to here. They had to actually go back to where they had emerged, and then fly south.
That's crazy.
So when you think about it, it's a pretty incredible journey for a little insect. I mean, when you really think about it, right? I mean, so then every year, of course, they basically come from Mexico and they work their way back up into the country. And occasionally, some of the ones will head over here into the western part of the United States. Now, in the western part of the United States, they do, of course, have monarchs. But the monarchs in the western part of the state don't go to Mexico. No. So they end up in a forested area that is south of San Diego. That is a overwintering spot for them. Yeah. So they don't go to Mexico. They end up down here in the lower part of the United States near the Mexico border. But that's what they use in the western part. So one of the things we try not to do is bring western monarchs to the east and vice versa, because we feel that it'll confuse them. Yeah, and then they probably won't be able to find their way to where they need to go.
The ones that are in Florida, northern Florida, will they go to Mexico?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, as climate change is happening and, basically zones are changing, and the fact is that the tropical milkweed is starting to be more prolific and growing up into higher levels of Florida. As that happens, they feel that those monarchs will not migrate. So the female lays her egg. So the egg itself, if you've ever seen a butterfly egg, it's really small. I mean, some people expect when they come to our facility, I don't know. They look for something that's this big. I'm like, but teeny tiny, okay?
Pinhead.
Pinhead.
Yeah.
So emergence from the egg, when the monarch caterpillar comes out of the egg, first thing it does is it eats the egg, because that is protein. There's a protein compound called chitin, and chitin basically is used across the world by many different creatures. Shellfish, crustaceans, I mean, it's a protein. So the monarch butterfly, or butterflies in general, use chitin to form their crystal. Yeah. So the caterpillar itself now goes through 5 cycles. And these are called molt and instar cycles. I didn't come up with the names, but you know, we think of molt, we think of a bird. But what the caterpillar basically, like all insects, is it has an exoskeleton. So unlike us as human beings, we have our skeleton inside our body and we have an outer skin. The caterpillar's outer skin is its skeleton. So it doesn't have any bony parts inside its body. So through the cycle, which takes about a little over 2.5 weeks, in order for it to grow, it has to push out of the skin that it's in once it gets to the point that it's too big for it. So it pushes out of the skin. When it does, it ingests the skin, doesn't waste anything.
Yeah.
And now it has a new skin, and now it goes through another. So when it pushes out of the skin and creates its new skin, that's called a molt. The in-between periods that it grows inside its new skin is called an instar. So instar, molt, instar, molt. Okay. So after 5 cycles, the caterpillar has now grown probably 2,000 to 3,000 times its original size when it gets to the end of its cycles. And when it pushes off the outer exoskeleton for the last time, it now produces a chrysalis, not a cocoon.
Yeah.
Only moths make cocoons, and only moths in certain families, like Satinaides or silk moths, make cocoons. So there's no such thing as cocoony things, okay? Unless we're talking about moths, all right? So they form a chrysalis, which is also known as a pupa. So the pupal cycle is the chrysalis, right? So the caterpillar cycle is known as a larva, or larval cycle. All right. So after the chrysalis is formed, okay, it takes probably about 20 minutes to half an hour for the chrysalis to basically reach its form and kind of harden. It's never really solid, but it's hardened. And now inside that chrysalis is everything that was the caterpillar is now going to be the butterfly. And actually, they have really realized that as the caterpillar is in its last cycle, there's already that stage going on inside of it before it actually finishes forming the chrysalis. So what is the word we use for that? Metamorphosis. So metamorphosis is to go from a juvenile to an adult, is basically what metamorphosis means. So in the case of the monarch butterfly in the chrysalis, it's now going to be an adult. So now inside that chrysalis metamorphosis is changing, and all of the parts of the butterfly are being formed. So about 7 to 9 days after that chrysalis will then split. And when it does, the butterfly emerges from it. And upon emergence, of course, it has to get its wings out, and it has to get those wings unfurled, and it has to get them stiffened and dried so it can take flight. And something that a lot of people don't know is the mouth appendage, which is known as, do you guys know what the mouth curly thing on the front of the butterfly is? Come on, help me. No. It's called a proboscis. All right, so basically it's a tube-like mouth part that the butterfly uses to take in nourishment. All right? Well, when the butterfly comes out of the chrysalis, that's split. It's in 2 pieces. So the butterfly, as it's letting its wings dry, has to get that to fuse together to form the proboscis. And if it doesn't happen, butterfly's not going to live. So it's kind of an important part at that point in time, you know, when you think about it. It's like, so during the time of emergence and the time the butterfly's hanging and getting its wings out and it's forming its proboscis is a very important time for it in order to basically be able to continue. If any of those things go wrong, it's toast. And believe me, we raise thousands of them every year. We know that
How often does that happen?
it's hard to say in the wild.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to say. But when you think about a female she can lay 400 to 600 eggs in her lifetime. Okay? And scientists believe that only about 3% of those eggs will ever make it to a full adult.
Wow.
So that's what you're really up against when you think about the fact is that, you know, they are food for other insects and different critters that will feed upon them. So, yeah. But, so when you, all that stuff has to come together or we don't get a butterfly, right? So, yeah, so it's kind of funny, but. So anyway, so, you know, understanding the monarch itself and understanding, you know, the butterfly, what it goes through. I mean, like milkweed. Okay, milkweed, we grow it in our gardens, hopefully, or in our backyards. I mean, the butterfly needs milkweed. I mean, it doesn't use anything else. It has to find milkweed in order to lay its eggs on, and that is what its caterpillar eats. So if you want to help the monarch butterfly, grow milkweed. When you see the female on a plant, she lays a lot of eggs. I mean, not like some butterflies. Some butterflies will lay 100 eggs at a whack. Female monarch doesn't do that. She'll lay an egg here, she'll lay an egg here, lay an egg here. She puts them in different locations on the plant. Probably just a way of preservation, you know, and you know. So another neat aspect of butterflies, especially monarchs, is that they have 6 legs. But if you ever observe a monarch, you're only going to see 4. So they use their mid legs and their rear legs for what they use to land on. And those legs itself have chemical receptors on them. So when they land on a plant, they can basically take a chemical signature from the plant through the absorption of these spots on their legs. Now that's good and bad, because when they land on things that are toxic and they taste them, guess what? Yeah. So unfortunately, you know, we love to handle butterflies. We think it's great, you know, but is it great? No. No, not if they land on you with their feet, because the first thing they're going to do is taste you. And if you've got hand sanitizer, chemicals, perfumes, okay?
Yep, next time I do that.
Not good for butterflies. So the front legs are called brushes or brush. So the butterfly is in a classification of butterflies called brushfoots or brush-footed butterflies. So the back legs have tarsa or actually a foot type of thing, but the 2 front legs don't. They have brushes on the ends of them. Occasionally, if a butterfly loses a leg, they can utilize the brushes, you know, as stability to help it stand. But the females use them for kind of a funny thing. They use them when they land on a milkweed plant. Sometimes the females will drum the plant. Okay? They'll drum it with the brushfoots and they'll drum it with their antennae. Well, what we figure they're doing is they're looking, what it's doing, it's telling them if there's caterpillars already present on the plant. They're actually getting basically a callback from the milkweed saying, hey, I've already got tons of caterpillars on me, so go somewhere else. Isn't that really interesting? Yeah, a lot of plants know how to do that. Yes?
Do all monarch butterflies migrate to Mexico in the winter?
No. So as I was saying earlier, there is a small area of Florida that they do not because of the tropical milkweed. They do not migrate.
In the Rockies.
San Diego.
And well, they still migrate. They still go down to South San Diego. Technically, there is still a migration because Washington, Oregon, Upper California still get winters.
Yeah.
So they're still cold. Right. And don't forget, they work their way all the way up into southern Canada. So they have to go somewhere during the winter. They have to, or they'd freeze to death.
So what's the consensus about what triggers that migration? I mean, you said it was the disappearance of the food, but is it, so it's not like birds where it's a hormonal response to length of day?
Well, they do feel it is kind of instinctive in them. They kind of know the time of year.
Yeah, so it must be hormonal.
In some ways, it probably is, or instinctively hormonal, yes. Again, based on sun position, time of year, and the generation itself. So third to fourth generation monarchs are usually the ones that will migrate. So, okay. So you got to think about laying eggs down here in Mexico and coming up in the United States. That's the first. That's the first. Second one gets up into the heart of the country. So second to third one is what we get up here generally, okay? So we work with the University of Kansas, Humanities University every year through the Monarch Watch program. So we're able to get eggs from them. Kansas will get the monarchs into Kansas a month before we get them up here in New England. So it just shows you the progression through the country and how it works. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So we're able to have them send us up monarch eggs, and we have to time that with our milkweed. And every year milkweed comes up when it feels like it. Last year we were panicking. The milkweed was only sticking up this high out of the ground when our eggs were arriving. My wife and I had to run all over the place getting little pieces of milkweed to feed the caterpillars until we actually got some growth out of our milkweed. So, yeah.
Different types of milkweed.
There's 110 in the United States alone.
Will they go to any of those?
Pretty much. They'll use all milkweed, yes. Yeah. I believe there's 147 in the world varieties of Asclepias, which is milkweed. Yeah, yeah. So, but no, common is one that we use the most. It's just because it's the largest leaves and it feeds the most caterpillars. Yeah, so don't forget, female butterflies are smart. They don't want to lay their eggs on just any plant. I mean, they look for plants that they can sense are nutritious and not unhealthy. I mean, that's the reason why that they have those chemical receptors in their feet, and that's the reason why they use their brush feet and their antennae, is because they're sensing that plant. She doesn't want to lay her eggs if she doesn't think that plant's going to be good for them. So, yeah. All right, so I think I've answered both. Yes, sir.
What's the highest velocity of wind they can handle?
I don't know. Well, don't forget, they look for prevailing winds. So they want winds going in the direction that they're going. So a lot of times on the coastal route, the butterflies will land along the coastal route on beaches and stuff. They don't take off until the winds are favorable. So, yeah. And there's another thing, too, about monarchs that you have to understand, that even though they're in migration, they're not all communal. They're not together, like a bunch of monarchs that are all hanging together. The butterflies themselves aren't communal. They don't connect with each other. They're just all going the same way. So if they happen to be in thousands, it's 1,000 butterflies going the same direction. Correct. Right, exactly. So that's the whole thing is the insect themselves, though, don't hang together because they're buddies. You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
Just happen they're going the same way.
Same way and going to the same place. Yes.
From a sort of survival standpoint, they've really kind of put all their eggs in one basket, and the basket being Mexico. Because if anything happens there, I mean, it could wipe out a population.
Yeah, well, the problem what they had going on in Mexico is because they had a lot of illegal logging going on. So the fir trees in the Olomel area of Mexico are well sought after because they're hardwood. And even though they protect them, the Mexican government was really dealing with a lot of illegal logging going on. I don't know, it seems like they've got it under control, but over the last couple decades it's been a problem. And one of the areas down there, they did expose a whole hillside, and basically the monarchs, where they go, they kind of cluster in between the fir trees for protection, because Mexico gets winters in the hills. Not like we do, but they're cold. And I forget the year, I should know it, I think it was 2007. There was a huge amount of monarchs that died because the exposure was too much for them. Right. So you're right. Do they put a lot of eggs in one basket? They do. Do scientists understand why they go there? Not really.
Right, right,
So it wasn't until 1974 that we realized this.
right.
So there was a scientist that basically was studying the monarch butterfly, and they were puzzled as to, where do they go? So down in Mexico, they hired a couple guys that were mountainous guys, and they said, go up into the mountains, see if you can find them. Well, they did. They found them. And that's how we now know where they go. But till 1974, we didn't know. We didn't understand the migration. We didn't know they went down there. Nope. So, yes.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
You might have already said it before I came. So the ones that we get now, because I have a lot of milkweed. I get a lot of are those the third ones, and then they're heading to Canada, or if we get them, they're going to head back down? And I see them about the end of July to the second week in August.
So right now, most likely, the monarchs you're seeing aren't the migratories yet.
Okay, they're still going to go.
Right, right. They're not the migratories yet. I mean, at our facility, we can kind of tell when we get into the end of September, the butterflies that, monarchs that emerge from chrysalis, they don't really seem like they want to eat, they're not mating, and they're agitated. And that kind of signals to us, okay,
They want to go.
bye guys, good luck.
See you later.
So that's kind of the way it works. It's really hard to pinpoint when the migration, or the migratories will emerge, but generally it's basically any time in September on. So you think about when the monarch butterfly arrives in Mexico at the overwintering areas is generally the end of October. So between Halloween in our country and the Day of the Dead in Mexico, which is I think the 2nd or 3rd of November, that's kind of the window that they start to see the monarchs arriving to the overwintering grounds. And then over the next probably 30 to 40 days, they'll continue to arrive, almost to mid-December. Yeah. So it depends on where they leave, what part, the country, and how long it takes them to get there. They believe it takes them a couple months. So when you think to that, it's a long time for them to travel all the way down there. Yeah. Did you have a second question?
I did. And I have a lot of the milkweed, but the wide. Should I also have like the swamp weed and stuff like that, or are those the other kinds of bugs?
No, any type of milkweed is good for the monarch. Yeah. So swamp in the Cardinata, Syriaca common, even butterfly weed, tuberosa is fine. Yeah, these are all great, things. Yeah. I mean, yeah, the herbs are more for like eastern black swallowtails and other types of butterflies. But yeah, but no, you can never have too much milkweed. Okay. And another thing too, just to give you a trick you can do with milkweed, is that when the milkweed gets to about end of June into July, sometimes it starts to get dry. Just go down the stalk and leave 4 leaves and cut it right off.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
But you got to leave 4 leaves. It still needs to create photosynthesis for growth.
Right.
But then what will happen is it'll send up 2 new shoots. And that way, actually, now you'll get softer milkweed into the later part of the season, for them. Yeah. So when the monarchs are in migration, they're not looking for milkweed. Okay? Yes?
No, because they're done.
The butterflies that you release in the migratory period, do you tag them?
No, we don't bother with the tagging program. I mean, if you want to get involved in that, you can. Monarch Watch and a few others, you can get in touch with them. And you'll learn like the discal cell of the monarch, which is the largest cell in the wing. That's where you put your tag, and they'll send you the tags. So if you want to involve yourself in the tagging program, you can. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, could you describe puddling?
Puddling. Okay. So the male butterfly requires more than just nectar. So the male butterfly requires salts and minerals, and what they believe it does is it prompts their mating with the females. Okay, so something in the male needs, I guess like men need testosterone. So butterflies puddle, and what they do is they'll go down to a side of a riverbank or somewhere where there's moisture and types of clay and sand and things, especially salts, and they'll basically absorb them, and that's what they call puddling. Right. So they seem to need it to be guys, I guess. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, it just seems to be the way it works. So yeah, but that is actually what they refer to as puddling. Yes.
Now, what part of the milkweed do they eat? That's not the seed or the flower or the pod?
So the caterpillars will eat almost everything. Depends on what they. So if they have their choice, they prefer eating the leaves.
They strip the leaves.
Yeah, they'll eat the leaves. But if they're in an area with very little milkweed, they'll eat anything on that plant they can eat, including the pods.
So it would be okay to cut the pods off and then put them back in water, or would you want to leave the pods in for you?
That depends if you're looking to add more milkweed to your area. Yeah, I mean, you know, once the pods crack open and the parachute seeds take off, I mean, that's, you know, they find places to regrow. Actually, going back to the missionaries, one of the main things they used to harvest from milkweed was the parachutes. So the seeds take off with a parachute. That's what propels them in the wind to find a new location. They used to pick all those off, and they used to use them for pillows.
So there's a lot in the giant.
They had plenty of time.
I have a question, that is milkweed, native to Cape Cod?
Yes. Yep. Milkweed is native to all of the United States. Yep. It is. Absolutely. I mean, we have a lot more common milkweed in this area, but, you know, incarnata. Now, something to know about swamp milkweed incarnata, if you have kind of a fancy garden and you don't want milkweed everywhere, swamp is probably your best choice. Mainly because it's the one milkweed that doesn't send rhizomes.
Yeah, go nuts.
Yeah, so that's the whole thing, yeah.
Is the tropical milkweed native to some part of the United States?
No, it was introduced into Florida, and that's why it's prevalent in Florida now, and because the conditions in Florida are good for it. But it was not, no. It's actually southern Mexico, more southern Mexico into Central America. That's really where, you know, the cursivesa is more prevalent in those areas.
My neighbor has a lot of it, and I know they're telling people not to plant it. Do they tell them to actually rip it up?
You know, that's a slippery slope. I mean, I'm sorry, half the yards I see, you should rip everything out of them because nothing in them is native, and they're all cultivars. But you know, we can't do that, right? Don't mention butterfly bushes. Central China. Yes.
How long do monarchs live?
So the monarch lives during its regular cycles around 30 days. So anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, 2 to 5 weeks is its average lifespan. Only during the migration does it live for months.
Is the viceroy in that family?
So the viceroy is a brushfoot, but it's not in the Danius complexus family, which is the monarch itself. But the viceroy itself, of course, it mimics the monarch. Yeah. So if you know your English hierarchy. Yeah. So the viceroy, when the king couldn't do his duties and there was no new king to take its place, the viceroy stepped in to run the country or the castle or whatever they had to do. So the viceroy was in place of the king. So it was in place of the monarch. You know, the monarch was the king of butterflies, so the viceroy was. That's why they named it the viceroy. And actually, we believe it was the settlers from England that gave it the name. So just like the butterfly, the monarch, we believe also was named by the settlers from England. When they saw the chrysalis and they saw the beautiful gold dotting, they said it looked like the crown of King James. So that's kind of what we believe is the origin of the name of the monarch butterfly. Yeah, it is fun, isn't it? Yeah, we love these facts.
I noticed that the cabbage is very prevalent.
Cabbage white is not native to the United States. It's believed that it came from Europe. But the cabbage white butterfly, like the painted lady, is now all over the world. Except maybe Antarctica, and with climate change, won't be long. But yeah, so the butterfly itself has found its way around the globe. So the painted lady, actually, here's a fact. Monarch doesn't have the longest migration. The painted lady has the longest migration, and the migration is from the west side of Africa, just beyond the desert region, all the way up to the Arctic Circle. So it's a little more than the monarch butterfly from southern Canada down to the overwintering grounds in OEML. So, another factoid.